Edgar, I think, presented. Well, these are all consent too.
Yeah, well, she just didn't want me to take these more.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But if you want to kick it off, you have that ability.
Good question. It's just hard because she can't answer.
Yeah.
She's not here.
Good morning and welcome to the May 21st Board of Supervisors meeting. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Peter Hernandez.
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have acknowledgement of the certificate of posting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. On the agenda here, we are moving to closed session, and we will continue. The closed session should not be long, and we'll be back in about, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes. Can you report out, Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'm recusing myself from this item because I live near the proposed project.
No problem.
Significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivisions D2 and E2 of Government Code Section 54956.9. Number of cases 1. Facts and circumstances justifying closed session. Potential litigation relating to a letter received on January 22nd, 2019, requesting the county enforce the zoning contract for the county and Ridgemark Corporation.
Comments from public? Public.
Is there any public comment?
For the closed session item.
Thanks.
What do you think Tim does? Yeah, he wouldn't come today. I'm going to be you first. Okay. I think it's better.
Would you like to report out, please?
No reportable action.
Okay, this brings us to the presentations and recognitions. The Resource Management Agency approve a proclamation recognizing May 19th through the 25th, 2019 as National Public Works Week. Supervisor Bertello.
Thank you. I guess we're going to invite, is it Adam, you accept the proclamation? Thank you, Adam Goldstein. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors and San Diego County, we want to proclaim National Public Works Week 2019, and that would run today through the rest of the week. But, you know, let me explain. Public Works is really the heart of, you know, some of the services that we have in our county. They take care of our roads. They take care of our buildings. They take care of our parks. It's for the enjoyment of our community as well as public safety. It really impacts all of our lives in one fashion or another, and so that's why we have to keep in mind and recognize the hard workers that from the guys that are shoveling the asphalt mix and fill potholes to helping keep our buildings operative and clean in our parks. So with that, I'm going to read some of this proclamation. Whereas Public Works provides services in our community that are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and the support and understanding informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, streets, highways, public buildings, and development review. And whereas health, safety, and comfort of the community greatly depends on these facilities and services. Whereas the quality, effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, construction, is vital dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials. Whereas the efficiency of qualified and dedicated personnel who staff Public Works Department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now, therefore, it be resolved and proclaimed that San Diego County Board of Supervisors does hereby recognize the week of May 19th through the 25th, 2019 as National Public Works Week. Congratulations, Adam, and I hope you say a few words. Great.
Sorry, thank you very much for the proclamation. And you know, every week we do our best and try to keep things moving. So appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
Very modest guy.
Now this brings up the second presentation. This is a presentation to recognize Ms. Frances Dolly Davaza for 40 years of service with the VFW Auxiliary Post 9242. Jaime?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dolly, you want to come to the podium, please? Oh, sorry about that. Dolly. Yes, madam. You know, actually, Dolly's almost like a legend in our community, especially at the post office, because every time I go to the post office and I see her out there sitting down with the other gentlemen and ladies and giving out lily flowers to the community, I make it a habit of making sure I donate because it's a good cause. And how can you say no to Dolly, especially when she's smiling at you and telling you, "Have a nice day, Mr. Dollar Cruz." So thank you. Congratulations for the entire over 40 years working in the community. We really do appreciate all the time you've done for our community. Dolly, I personally got to know her as Dolly, and I will continue to call you Dolly. Dolly, the Board of Supervisors would like to recognize your services of over 40 years to our community, to the VFW Auxiliary Post 9242, and your countless hours of volunteerism to the community of San Benito County. So on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, just want to congratulate you, and I hope you continue to put in more hours in our community, because you are a wonderful person. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Want to say something? Sure. Okay. Thank you very much for this proclamation. I want to know that you all to know that I didn't do it alone. I got help from all my auxiliary members all through the years, and there's a few out in the audience right now, so I want to thank them too. A lot of them have gone by, so I can't thank them, of course, but since I'm a veteran myself, who's married to a veteran too, I understand the hardships the veterans go through all their lives, especially when they go into the military, they lost their lives practically. They don't know if they're ever going to come back. So when you see a veteran or something, be nice to them. Do the best you can for veterans, because life is very important, and they should live to the fullest if possible. So anyway, I'll shut up now, but thank everybody. Thank you all for this. Thank you.
All right.
This is a part of the meeting where we have public comment, opportunity to address the board on items of interest not appearing on the agenda. No action may be taken unless provided by Government Code Section 54954.2.
Yes. Marty Martinez.
This is on the agenda.
He has a public comment.
Yes, but are you speaking with the... Yes, that's on the... We can wait. We can wait till the actual item is up to be heard.
Tammy Avalos.
Right, honey?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, supervisors. I'd like to say thank you to the veterans. I'm from a military family, and my son is in the armed services, so thank you. My name is Tammy Aviles. I'm with the Coalition for a New Community Library and Resource Center, and I just wanted to thank each of the supervisors for taking the time to meet with us and continue to support our efforts as we work towards the expansion of the library and adding more technology rooms and study rooms and classrooms, and expand on the joint efforts with the schools in the area, including San Francisco State, that has a college transition program that they are offering. And then, so then that's that for the coalition. So now I'm just Tammy, resident. I wanted to say thank you to Supervisor Giglio for your meeting last night with the fire safety. It was actually very informative for me personally. And there was something else, and I forgot now because I didn't write it down. But it was something else saying thank you, too. So good morning, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, on Monday, May 27th, it's Memorial Day, and just want to take this minute to think about what Memorial Day is. Often people look at Veterans Day, Armed Forces Day, and then there's Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a day in which people left and they didn't come back. They lost their lives. So Monday when we're barbecuing and we're having fun, please take the time to really think about what happened. The families that have lost their loved ones because they felt that it was right to enter into the armed forces and partake in what we need to do is protect our country. So please, on Monday, think about that while we're barbecuing. I do want to thank Supervisor Bertello and some of the other supervisors because it does take a team when we're up here discussing things. Anthony reminded me that this was the last meeting before Memorial Day. So it's that, once again, it's, when I bring back, when we talk about the military, it's teamwork. I was in the United States Air Force for 4 years, and it's all about teamwork, and it's no different than us up here. So I want to let Anthony say a couple things about Memorial Day, and I appreciate the reminder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think any of us here take our freedoms for granted, and our servicemen and women that have given up their lives, so we have our freedom today and are able to participate in meetings like this and express ourselves and be civil about it. It comes at a very dear cost. And, it was very fitting today to recognize a wonderful community leader, Dolly, a few minutes ago, veterans of, that, go into the service, serve their country, come back, and then they serve their community all their lives. And I, for one, being a citizen, am eternally grateful, and I try to keep in mind the sacrifices that were given so we could be able to have what we have in this country today. And that's what we should all try to remember, put aside some differences and know that we're one people. Thank you.
Okay, so now let's go into board announcements, and this is, department head announcements, information only. CAO Reyes-Pinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bear with me on this one. Staff will be pulling item number 25 and 38. We're actually removing it from the agenda. Item number 21, we will be pulling that as well, removing it, but we'll be coming back to you at another date. We're hoping to bring it back at the next board meeting. We're going to have more communication with the CSAs concerning that particular item. I was also asked from RMA to pull item 35, we will be pulling just item number 5 from the contract. We're pulling the contract from that, so item 5 will be removed. And 32, one modification, book 1 has been added and has been given to the clerk of the board. So
what was that?
Item number 32.
32?
Yeah, book 1 has been added, and it's filed with the clerk. One other announcement I'd like to make is I want to thank Stuart Petrie. He's our budget officer, as well as Dulce, for doing a lot of work on our impact fees. We actually had a meeting with the city this last week to discuss impact fees with the city and getting some of the impact fees on. Stuart actually went to the city council yesterday, and the city council went ahead and moved forward with the jail and juvenile hall impact fee update, as well as a library update. So I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. And that's all the announcements I have, Mr. Chair.
We'll go on with board announcements. We'll start with Supervisor Peter Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was finishing up on some of my notes. But yeah, I had a really busy last 2 weeks. One of the things that I, took to heart personally with what Chair Medina had mentioned to Mary Gilbert of COG to try to get that COC Oversight Committee filled, and I reached out to some folks trying to basically recruit and encourage them to get an application, fill it out, and turn it in. I think there was a little bit of a confusion because, granted the date, and that's the way it was set with the application, there's a deadline, and those folks said, I can't apply because the deadline is passed. And I said, no, just apply. They basically mentioned to us that there was a need for more members. So if there's any way to get clarification for those folks, even for Ms. Gilbert's secretary, I think, because I think that's where everything's getting filtered through. So for clarification, because if we need those folks, we don't want to turn them away. And then, I had in tandem, sitting down with the library folks, I sat down with Susan Logue and Nora, and me and Dulce basically had a really good dialogue, and it really was to try to figure out how we can bridge what we're trying to do with trying to get this library, because one of the things I stressed is everybody's focused on making sure that we get a new library, but ultimately, we're right now in the discovery phase with this May 23rd. I think some county staff are going to go, the city's going to go, and we're basically going to visit CSUMB, the business center, and their library. And I think our CAO is going to. So anyways, and it's all about trying to figure out how to make this thing really, really successful and involve the library folks. So we invited them also. So I think it's going to be a good turnout, and hopefully it'll create a little bit of excitement, so we'll figure out how we can really work together. I had a town hall with, my constituents. It's funny because it's 5-6 months in. I was trying to basically gather my thoughts, make sure that I had a good dialogue with my constituents, and the goal was, and I actually invited Edgar, our assistant CAO, just to kind of fill in the gaps should there be any questions that were a little bit more on the detail-oriented side. But it was with the mayor, and it was just a good open-ended conversation. It was really more about trying to get feedback from the public, not really to get into really reporting, because 6 months in, there's a lot of work that I'm still trying to do. But that was, I think, a really successful outcome, because ultimately the goal is to try to create a good relationship with the public so that they can understand where you're at. And not that they would agree with you on everything, but ultimately that they understand that your goal is to make sure that you facilitate a good conversation with them, and they really trust that that we're going to work together and we're there to represent them. So, and I think the last thing I was going to mention is, two things. One is EDC. I sat down with Aaron Johnston and Miss Enns, just trying to finalize, really trying to figure out what this EDC means. And he agreed that it was kind of a little bit of a higher level presentation that he gave, which is part of my confusion, and that's why I wanted to engage him, just to get really more concrete metrics. That's what I really wanted. I mean, if we're going to spend almost $1 million between us and the city, we need to make sure that we know where those dollars are going and that the return on investment on the taxpayers' dollars is there. So personally, I'm thinking the more we get involved in this, if we're really going to go forward with EDC, that we should have, at least on our end, some kind of oversight. Because I know that he basically said we're going to come to your meetings, we're going to listen. I think it needs an active dialogue ongoing where we're being filled in, because there's so many different layers to this EDC that it could easily get complicated and to a certain extent convoluted, and not intentionally, but it's just because there's a lot of layers to it. So. So if we can think about what that means, and then the last thing is we visited Hernandez Reservoir just yesterday. Me and our CAO went, and we had some of the water board members. It was a long drive. It was a good hour and a half out there, and I didn't really believe him, but sure enough, when we're going up, finally getting to Hernandez Reservoir, I felt like I was getting flashbacks of our Jim West tour. The rocky road, it was like really bumpy and stuff, and in our CAO's 4x4. But it was fun, It felt like we were four-wheeling for a little bit. Either way, the goal was to get a really good idea of there's a lot of history there, and that's one of the biggest takeaways that I got. Such a beautiful area, a lot of history. I was really excited to be out there, because being born and raised here, I haven't even known that there was a Hernandez Reservoir, and that's to my ignorance. But ultimately, as I saw it, I thought, man, this is such a beautiful area. There's so much more to our community that I think is good to value. So. And then just figuring out what it would mean to maybe consider having public access, if possible, for that reservoir as an opportunity. And then we also visited Clear Creek, which is, I know, in Supervisor Gila's backyard. It was, I didn't even intend to go there, but we went there because we were so close to it. But it was really good. So, and I definitely want to involve Supervisor Gila in the conversation if he would like to on what that means. So that's all I have to report. I know it was a lot, but hopefully it really helped the dialogue. Thank you.
Supervisor Jaime de la Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I had a conversation with a constituent last night about Dunn Park, and I want to thank Supervisor Hernandez for actually introducing the gentleman to me. I guess we're having a lot of homeless issues on Dunn Park and the surrounding neighborhood, and I think Supervisor Hernandez and myself, Mr. Chair, would like to put an item on the agenda to invite the City of Hollister to discuss options and how we can address homelessness in that part of the community. Harvey from Joshua Inn also has concerns. Some other citizens have concerns, and it seems like it's just falling on deaf ears. And I think maybe we as elected officials, let's work together with the city how we can make sure that we get Dunn Park back.
You want that on the 11th?
Yes, if that gives enough time for the City Hollister staff to come to our meeting, definitely. Okay.
And I think in that, if I may, Supervisor.
Yes.
Chair. Yeah. So part of it is to involve Health and Human Services, talk about the continuum of care and basically the wraparound services. Trying to come up with a concrete idea on how to make this a long-term solution.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also, Mr. Chair, there's a member of the audience, Marty's here, and he's here more for the San Justo update, and I don't want to throw the thunder on that one. I'll wait to report on that, but I'm so excited now that more and more members of the public are interested in opening up San Justo for recreational, and I think that is the number one goal that we should work on too. And the last one, Mr. Chair, just more of a personal note, and that is that I was kind of busy too, but in this nature was more family, domestic busy. I had the birth of my third grandchild. My granddaughter was born, and so trust me, when you see a baby being born, it's your grandchild, you look at it different, say, what did your parents thought? Well, guess what? I have become my parents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Botello.
I'm going to defer the COG report to my colleague, Supervisor Gilio, and I just want to congratulate Supervisor De La Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you.
So COG for Supervisor Hernandez and for the community in general, we just got an email today from our COG director, and because of the amount of supervisors I can send it to, I'd recommend that our staff maybe sends that to everybody. So what we're looking for is the labor/trade category. That was the only category that wasn't applied for. We ended up with 19 applications that covered every supervisorial district, the city of San Juan Bautista, the city of Hollister, and then all the different all the different groups that we at COG had made a priority to seek representation from. And labor/trade is the only one that we are currently still looking for that was unfilled. So that's the one that.
How about San Juan Bautista?
San Juan Bautista was filled.
Okay,
yes.
cool.
Yes. So that's on COG, and that will come back at the next meeting. Hopefully, we get that one missing group or representative. And I suppose if we don't get it, we're going to have to take another look at how we set up the committee, perhaps, and figure that out. But we're hopeful that there are some labor and trade folks that will apply for that. I really encourage everybody to do that. And if we can do our social media and our email networks to get that out, that would be great. On COG, I have a CalCOG meeting next week, which is our California Council of Governments group up in Sacramento. I'll be up there on Tuesday, meeting with our assembly member, and then also Wednesday for the CalCOG meeting. And that's, again, to lobby for us to get as much possible state matching funds as we possibly can get for our projects. The key for us is the more money we can get for the matching on 25, the more money we can use for our local roads out of the Measure G fund that was passed by our voters this year. Quick update on Measure G. Just again, I think every meeting it's important to mention it. We started collecting funds on April 1st of this year. So about a month and a half ago, the first disbursement of funds will come towards fall of this year. And the key is we need to get our strategic plan in place, which we're working on. We're out to bid to select a contractor for that, to help us with that, a consultant. And then we are also forming our Citizens Advisory Committee that needs to be, per the ordinance, established prior to any expenditures being made. So that is in progress, and I think it's going well. Frankly, we're working on that. Memorial Day, I wanted to mention Monday, Memorial Day, 11 a.m., I believe it is, at the VFW Hall. I'm looking at you folks over there to see if you're shaking your heads yes or no. I think it's 11. Yes, we're getting a yes, so I wanted to make sure I had the time right. It was a great ceremony. My family and I make it a point to be there every year, and I hope to see you all out there, especially all of our supervisors and elected officials. I hope we're all down there supporting our veterans Monday at 11 a.m. I got a message from Supervisor Hernandez regarding a traffic issue on Enterprise Road. So, I followed up with a constituent. I called them. I haven't, we're playing phone tag. We haven't talked yet. I called, I haven't got a call back. But I also asked CAO Espinosa, see if we can do some engineering out there, some speed signs, something to indicate that this is not a pass-through and to slow down. It's a concern. CSAs have been very active and busy. We're working on a lot of CSA issues. Just yesterday, I want to thank CAO Espinosa, Edgar Nolasco for spending so much time with me out at Quail Hollow and Oak Creek yesterday, two big CSAs in my district. And I got to tell you, we're making a lot of progress. I really appreciate the board's support to get these issues resolved. We have a great landscaping contractor, and we're really working to make sure that all these issues are addressed per the contract, per what the county's committed to, using CSA funds, by the way, not any county funds, usually their existing funds. And I thought the meeting went really well, and I wanted to thank you both for your time, because I know you're very busy, and that was a lot of time to spend out there, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We had a community meeting last night, went really well. I see Chief Bedolla is there in the back. We had Chief Bedolla from Hollister Fire. We had Chief Lopez from CAL FIRE come out and give a quick fire safety talk and talk about the resources that are available, especially in the rural areas. And we had a lot of our CSAs there, which was great. And I'm looking at a couple of our CSA folks here to make sure that one of our CSAs in particular, Vineyard Estates is Vineyard Estates is doing good, but somebody's even doing better. Hidden Valley, I said the wrong one. They have a fire plan in place. They're actually buying two-way radios so they can communicate in case the power goes out and the cell phone lines go down and the phone lines go down. So they're really focused on fire safety, and I think we really need to be this year. And in my district, particularly in Anthony's district, Mark, we have a lot of rural areas, and we need to be ready. We don't want to have a tragedy happen and not be ready for it. So this is a second fire safety meeting. The San Diego County Fire Safe Council hosted one at Hollister Hills. We hosted this one last night, and it won't be the last. We're going to keep reaching out. And Chief Bedolla, one of the things that he made very clear that this year, if you live in a rural area, particularly next to a thoroughfare road, you need to have your 100 feet of safe, clear space around your home. And if you don't understand what that is or know what that is, the Hollister Fire Department, CAL FIRE, they're very happy to reach out, and they'll even come out to your house and show you this is what you need to do. And then with that is going to come enforcement. If you're not able to do that, their ultimate goal is compliance, just to get people to be safe, but they're also working on enforcing this year, so that'll be new. And you may get a letter in the mail that says, hey, you didn't take care of your dispensable space, please take care of this, and if not, there's a state law that they can enforce you to do that, or you face some sort of civil fine. So I would really encourage you, just for the good of the order and safety, to get your 100 feet of dispensable space. And then June 5th, there's a meeting all day at the Vets Hall regarding prescribed burns. And this is a UC program that's set up. And then on the 6th, actually, they're going to do a prescribed burn in South County near Bitterwater. So you can actually go out, you can see how the burn's set up, you can see all the safety, and you can learn more about that. So critical for our vegetation management. Obviously, we've had a very wet winter. We've had many years of dead vegetation, so we got to be ready for fire season. I really appreciate you guys all coming out. At the tail end of that meeting, we talked about hot topics in the county. We didn't have a whole lot of time, unfortunately, because the fire presentation was great, and we had a lot of questions. And I wanted to thank Chairman Medina. Didn't expect you to show up out there. I really appreciate you coming out there to be there in case any questions come up. And also, Mr. Nolasco was there to handle any questions, and I think you got a couple on CSA, so thank you for being there. And sorry for the long report, Mr. Chair. I'll cut it off there. Thank you.
Supervisor De La Cruz has a question about the COG membership.
Yeah, Jim Gilligo, I'm Supervisor Jim Gilligo. I do appreciate last week you asking me if I had any concerns about the list of the citizens, and at that time I said no, but then last night I was actually looking at it again, and has the deadline been passed?
Yeah, a long time ago, yeah.
Because I just, somehow I just feel that District 5 is not being represented well on that list. And I just wondering if COG is willing to reconsider, allowed, to search some of the members out on District 5, in District 5, to be on the advisory committee.
So your District 5 representative was a gentleman named Andrew Rollins. He also represents Pet Friends. He works with Pet Friends, and that's who was.
I was thinking of some farm workers or some low-income members of the family. That's what I was thinking of.
Okay. I think that's something we have to bring back with COG. It's not my choice or my decision. I think there was an application deadline.
I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
but
we're the leaders here. We could set.
Well, I recommend you talk.
Yeah.
After the meeting, please.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah.
This takes us to our consent agenda. The ones that have been taken off, just so I have that right, is number 25, number 35, number 5, number, was there any more there, Ray?
21 was going to be posted.
Number 21.
And 38 is on regular.
And 38, yes. And personally, I'd like to pull number 35, number 6, and pull number 33. These both will be for discussion. Supervisor Gillo, anything you'd like to pull?
No, with the ones you pulled, I'm fine, thank you.
Supervisor Botello?
Yes, I do. I'm abstain on number 18 as I have a conflict of interest as the high-speed rail. I have property that's affected. I would like to pull 22, and I also had 33 as well.
So pull 22?
Yeah.
So you're going to pull 22 and recuse yourself of 18. Supervisor De La Cruz.
Number 9, Mr. Chair.
Number 9. Supervisor Hernandez?
No, Mr. Chair, the ones you pulled are...
Okay, so with that being said, what's the wish of the board?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the items pulled and the recusal mention.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. That will lead us to number 9. Behavioral Health Department.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alan. I ask you this question every time you come before us, and my question to you is, why can't we have someone on staff versus hiring on contract?
Yeah, we've been in a process of recruiting somebody that we think can function at this level, and we lost 2 of those people in a row in a period of less than a year.
Okay, so it's hard to fill this position?
Yes. So right now we have an accountant 3 position that we just promoted somebody into, and our fiscal consultant is working to train this individual, but he started that process with 2 other people preceding this person, and we lost both of them in a period of about a year.
Okay.
So, it's been a difficult process. We realized that we would like to have more of this type of help internally, so that's where we're at. This particular individual does bring a great deal of knowledge, and I think he helps a lot. I would like to have more of that, and obviously by developing somebody at the accountant 3 level, training them, I would get more of that. So I would anticipate in the longer range, maybe at shorter range, that we would titrate down this contract as we move forward with a person that we have trained. It's all in anticipation of retention. I think we have somebody really good right now, though.
Yeah, because since I've been a supervisor, this gentleman, or this contract has always come before us, and I've always asked you that question.
Yeah.
And, hopefully, for the 16th time, you really have someone on staff. I mean, I don't question the gentleman's skills. I think they're highly required, highly needed in our community, but it'd be nice to have someone on staff.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What's the wish of the board?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
First, second. What's vote? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you.
Takes us to number 22, Mr.
You better vote on 18.
We
Abstain from that.
We passed it. We passed it.
Pass it? Oh, okay.
Just so you understand, we can actually pass it with you
okay.
being here, with the exception if we pull it to
good.
converse about it, then you'd have to leave the room.
All right.
Okay?
That works.
And we'll go back to 22. County Council, approve amendment number 2. This is brought up by Supervisor Botello.
Yes, I brought this up because I think we just want to be very clear that I hope the board exhausts all our means to communicate and dialogue with the Sunny Slope Water District to resolve this problem before we start spending money on
Mr. Chair, I need to interrupt. I need to recuse from this item. I'm sorry. They're customer mine. I didn't realize that was a Sunny Slope. I saw his name, and I thought it was for the...
Sunny side.
And I think before we engage with the lawyer that hopefully our staff and maybe even the chair be involved in making sure that we have exhausted the dialogue before getting into the more the seriousness of lawyers talking to each other. And this is a big deal to the county. This landslide happened over a year ago already, and we've been very patient. We did our study, and the responsibility has to do with those ponds up there, and hopefully we could get this resolved amicably.
Could you set up something with Supervisor Patel and myself to meet with the water board and discuss this?
Okay.
That's right.
So then, Mr. Chair, are we going to hold off on approving this amendment?
If you, I'll give you 2 options. One is that you can approve it, and I was hoping that we wouldn't use that whole amount, that we'd be able to resolve settlements, but this was going to be, I noticed that we were getting low on our balance remaining, so I was hoping to have make sure that we had a contract in place before the other one was exhausted. So if we did reach a settlement, then we wouldn't use all this amount. And the alternative, you could approve like $3,000 or $4,000 to hold us through, if there's anything that we need, and then I'll bring back a further update to the board at a future meeting.
I actually like the idea of approving $3,000 to $4,000.
Mm-hmm. That should keep us while we're in kind of a discussion mode right now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea.
You want to make the motion, or you want me to?
To amend.
You want to make the motion?
Yeah, to amend it.
You go ahead.
I'm sorry, public comment? Dealing with number 22, approve amendment number 2 to legal services agreement with Colantino, Highsmith, and Lantley PC in the additional amount of $3,000 for work related to a Southside Road landslide. SBC file number 160.
I'll second your motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0. 4-0, Jim recused himself. This brings us to number 33. This is pulled by myself. we want to approve a contract amendment number 3 for 4-leaf professional services. Contract to add additional compensation in the amount not to exceed $391,960 and extend the expiration date of services from June 30th, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. 2, approve a contract with 4-leaf for Public Works Inspector Services for the term of May 21st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020 in the amount not to exceed $806. The reason why I pulled this was right now we're actively searching for an RMA director. And I believe we had the first interviews last week and the final interviews on Wednesday. At that point in time, we should select the RMA director, and it's my thought is we should leave this up to the RMA director once he or she is in place. So looking at possibly extending the contract for 6 months, which would give that individual time to really become used to what's happening, and they may look at something different. That's why we're hiring a person of this caliber to make these decisions, because he or she has been involved in different communities and different municipalities, and we want them to bring in a fresh set of eyes, not, with all due respect, stale eyes like we have, because we've seen this day in and day out. So that's what I'm proposing.
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor Delacruz?
yeah, thank you. I'm a firm believer that once you hire a department head, if they're not employees and their contracts, you want that department the flexibility to make changes if they wish to make changes. And I'm going to agree with your position. I think that once the county does hire someone, let that person decide which way they want to go. And no disrespect to 4-leaf.
Yes.
I just want to make sure the new person coming in has all the tools available at their disposal.
So you thinking 6 months is ample time, or is that too much?
I think it's too much, I'll be honest.
I would.
There is opt-out provisions also, Chair, that we can also, if the new RMA director chooses, he can opt out of this contract with the provisions stated within the contract.
Does that contract, is there a clause that we have to pay X amount of money?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend staying with the 6 months. The only reason why I would say that is there needs to be some time to evaluate, and then if we decide to go out to RFP, it's going to take at least 3 months minimum. So
I'm fine with 6. Supervisor Gilio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree. 6 months, I think, is needed, and here's why: is we're going to have a new RMA director come in. There's a lot to tackle. There's a lot of vacancies, and don't forget, RMA handles 7 departments, right? 7 areas. So this is one of the areas that needs a lot of attention. So I wanted to thank you for that, and I support 6 months. I think that's going to barely be enough time for them to get in there, get their head above water, evaluate what's going on, then make a decision if they want to continue on or bring on full-time staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Patello.
Yeah, I had this pulled as well for a number of reasons, but I'm going to support the 6 months. But what concerns me, because we're struggling to get permits done, code enforcement, I see there's code enforcement also kind of addressed in this contract. I don't know how much of code enforcement we've actually have received from 4-leaf, or if it's a different type of code enforcement, but that's an area that I've been very concerned about for a number of years, and we got to get better at it. And I'm looking forward to the new RMA director, but it takes some time to review the organization and then also try to hire back, hopefully back to permanent staff. And with our classification studies and salary studies, and if we could get a little bit more competitive, we're not having to depend so much on consulting services. But one of the things I didn't understand from reading this agenda item was the balance. It's a $1.5 million contract almost with this amendment, but we have revenues coming in. And when we initiated going in with 4-leaf, it was kind of a break-even cash flow. Do we have that at this point in time?
So as you see with the next items, we're going to have a CSG item that's going to be pulled, or the 35, I believe, is pulled as CSG in there, as well as this one. There is revenues that come in. So as like the CSG contract, we have our waste connections. That piece of it, we get compensated from the city of Hollister and city of San Juan Bautista. So there's revenues coming in that we don't account for here, but we're upfronting this contract, so we have to have that. So with regards to the detail of that and how much, I can't answer that, but we can come back to your board and give you more, especially with the new RMA director. That was one of the items that's very important to us, because we need to have a better accounting of what goes on and make sure that we are actually hitting those accounts that are being either reimbursement accounts or other funds that we have and not coming out of the general fund. So that's very, very important.
You know, we try to structure our fee schedule to kind of at least recover costs, and if not today, of course, or maybe even, but during the budget discussions, I would like to have a little bit better, clearer understanding as far as the impacts that these contracts are having on our general fund.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to, this particular item, there's two elements to this. One is for doing chief building official duties, as well as public works side. Adam's here, can discuss that a little bit more with regards to inspections, paving roads, that kind of thing. But what I wanted to mention, and Edgar can elaborate a little bit further, the chief building official, there is a great need for that position throughout the state, all up and down the coast. There's a lot of jurisdictions that really need to have this type of expertise in their jurisdiction. And we just can't, with the amount of building going on, the amount of things that are happening, if we don't have even a contract, because we're trying to, we've gone out for recruitment, we've gone out, we've done this, we haven't been able to recruit, and it's very competitive. And with our salaries, they're a little bit lower than the surrounding jurisdictions. It's been very difficult to hire somebody. So it's important that we have somebody on staff, whether it's a contractor in this position, just to keep things moving forward. So just want to make sure the board is aware of that as well.
Yeah.
Just in regard to your chief building official, do we have that currently out searching for a chief building official?
We have it vacant funded. We've opened it in the past and been unsuccessful with
so
someone.
Do we have it right now? Or is it out?
No, it's not
Okay,
open.
so, here we're saying, Ray, that we can't find one. Well, you can't find one if you're not advertising for it. So we need to make sure that we're advertising. That's what we have to do that. We can't just say, well, there's no people out there, there's a shortage, and then give up. We have to continuously strive to fill that position.
Yeah, we can do that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate staff's issues and concerns and views. At the same time, again, we are in the process of filling that position with a permanent individual. Don't want to handicap that person any longer than 6 months, and if the need arises, we could always bring it back in 4 or 5 months and to continue this discussion.
I would like to add one comment to that, though, too. One of the things that Edgar and I have been discussing is actually allowing the RMA director to kind of strategize and hire his folks as well. So there has been some conversation with this, as well as even the contractual staff, how he's going to actually fill his office with his staff. And we want to do is kind of allow that to happen as well, but we also still need to have this. So there's some madness to the reasons why we've kind of pulled back a little bit, but we definitely hear what the board is saying, and we'll make sure that is going to be his first priority. Thank you.
Yeah, and that it just goes back, CAO, no disrespect, it just goes back to, go back to the assistant CAO. We said we didn't have any applications. Think Edgar comes on board, and we had how many?
We got 40-something.
40-something applications. So that's all I'm trying to say is, there's times when we become a little bit, we give in and we just say, okay, well, it's, we've been doing this for 4 years, 5 years, and we haven't seen anything, but we have to continuously try to reinvent ourselves. But I like the idea of having the RMA director involved in the process, and because he or she will be in charge of those people, we can get better buy-in that way. But I just want to make sure we don't lose sight That's all I'm referring to.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to add to that as well, and I appreciate that. One of the things that we've had with Edgar on board now, he's been actually a blessing to our county because he's been specific when he goes out to hiring. Before, we would just kind of go out and just post it on NeoGov or whatever, and he's been actually doing more headhunting recruitment, which has been fantastic, and we've had definitely a better success rate with that. So.
If I may add, Chair, we also registered our domain name, sbchr.us, so we're trying to be more marketable to the folks out there. So if you type in sbchr.us, it goes straight to our job. You don't have to go through our county website and navigate to find our jobs. It's a lot more easier for getting those applicants out there.
Perfect. Any questions from the board members?
If we don't need public comment, I'm prepared to make
Is there any public comment? Back to the board members.
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So by going 6 months, we're going to prorate to not exceed. Is that my understanding?
I was going to make a motion that divides the amount in half and the time in half, and see how that motion goes, if you guys are okay with that. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve contract amendment number 3 for 4-leaf professional services in the amount of $195,980 and extend the expiration date of the service from June 30th, 2019 until December 31st, 2019. And that is for the professional services. Next, approve a contract with 4-leaf for Public Works Inspector for the term of May 21st through December 31st, 2019, in the amount not to exceed $174,403, which is half.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion. You're saying it's half. How did you come up with that number, I guess?
The first one here, it says professional services was for 1 year was $391,960.
No, that part I get. It's the second part.
Oh, the second one says for the public work inspector services not to exceed an amount of $348,806 for the full year. And I just divided that by 2.
Yeah.
Because from May 21st to December 31st, that's roughly 7 months, and then... Okay. All right. I thought it was December 2020. It's actually June 30th. Okay.
Yeah,
I think
Is
it's right.
there-
Yeah.
I'm good.
2019.
Is there a time limit to get this done, or should this be continued to the next meeting so that there's a final contract that's brought back with the exact numbers? Because it looks like there's a little bit more than 6 months if it's from May 21st on. Do you need the amendment today? And are you satisfied? Or should we just say, and delegate authority to the
That's
CAO
what
to
I was
finalize
I was just gonna say
contract
that.
within the
modify-
parameters given by the board?
I'll modify my motion to delegate the authority of the CAO within the parameters of the board for the 6-month extension for the professional services and the public works director.
I'll accept the second.
Yeah, and through the chair, of course, I think this is okay. It should be, because we're billed by the hour for much of these services in any case, and if things kind of go where we need to hear it again, we bring it back and we hear it again. That's simple, and then by that time, hopefully, we have the input of a new RMA director as well, and maybe job searching for positions to permanently fill within our structure. So I'm going to support this.
There is one motion that was changed. Is there a second?
I accept it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. This now will take us to number 35. Number 6. Number 6 was pulled by me also. This is dealing with our CSG consultants. We'd like to amendment for number 6 for the term of 5/1/2015 through 6/30/2020 for management support for the integrated waste management program and landfill negotiations, in an additional amount of $259,853 for a total contract amount not to exceed $1.2 million. What I'm looking at is I like to do the same thing as I've done with the 4-leaf, is possibly extend this for a shorter period of time, and maybe with the RMA director looking at the situation, possibly going out to an RFP. She's been with us she started in 2015, CAO Espinosa? Or was she there before?
I believe so. I will look at some of the dates. Actually, yeah.
And for me, I like, personally, is different people coming in and looking at what is happening here. Once again, I always bring that stale set of eyes. We become accustomed, and we become creatures of habit, and just say, okay, well, everything looks good. So I'd rather possibly look out there. I believe there's probably hundreds of firms out there that do this type of consulting. So I would like, once again, to bring this up and let the RMA director, after 6 months, decide what the best move is.
That's fine with staff.
Mr. Chair, I agree. I think any opportunity to allow the new RMA director to form their team and their staff to be successful, I think it is important.
Mr. Chair, actually, I'm going to go a little tougher on your stand, and and Ray knows how I feel about this, and I think we need to hire someone permanently for that position.
I can't argue with you.
I'd like to do. Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to add to that. And one of the things is we actually got the direction of the board to do that some time back. We actually started the process. We hired somebody, came in, did the training, getting ready to hand the baton off, and the person unfortunately left. And so very similar to Alan Yamamoto, and you're kind of hearing an ongoing theme here. So we're in the process. She is in the process of actually training as well to hand that baton off soon. So hopefully that 6 months will hopefully that'll work with that. So.
Supervisor Hernandez, any questions?
So, if I'm not mistaken, CEO, thank you, Chair, the goal is ultimately if these folks pan out, or this person pans out, that there's maybe a way to keep them, or some, because if we're looking for a full-time person, I just, I'm trying to understand how, because I get it, we subcontract because there's basically folks that stick around for, and it doesn't end up panning out. So I'm just trying to understand what the long-term strategy is.
Well, the long-term strategy is to have this firm train an employee in our county to handle the workload. So the workload, there's quite a few things. They actually manage AB 939, AB 341, AB 1594. They actually make sure the franchise agreement compliance and reporting. We work with the city jurisdictions. There's a lot of work that actually goes into the work that is done within the contract that we have currently, but ultimately our goal is to have someone hired on within our staff that can handle and manage that. And if there's anything that comes up that's big or an emergency, obviously having the ability to come back to the board and ask for help either through a contract or bringing in another person if that is needed. So,
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Bertello?
Yeah, it'd be great to have a goal, but this is a highly specialized, very complex business, integrated waste. The laws are constantly changing up in Sacramento, constantly. Our county is growing. It's not a small county like some of the Sierra counties, but we're not little either, and it's hard to fill these positions. It's high price. And it would be ideal to have someone that's day-to-day in RMA that does the kind of grunt work, for lack of a better word, but some of the real expertise, understanding, it's an area that we could get in trouble real fast, too. So I just want to keep the board keep that in mind.
What's the wish of the board?
Public? Don't we have to go to public?
Oh, public comment? What's the wish of the board?
I'll make the similar motion that I made, that we amend the scope of the contract to a 6-month time period and authorize the CAO to execute the details on our behalf, dividing the amount of funds in half and the time by 6 total months.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Actually, I got a question. This is for number 6, right, Mr. Chair?
Yes, number 6, sir.
Yep, perfect.
35-6.
Yeah.
Do we have a second? Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you. This now brings us to our regular agenda. First up, Mr. Martinez now. Receive an update on the San Justo Reservoir. I'm going to start off with public comment, if you don't mind.
No.
And I will, how many speaker cards do we have? You know, Mr. Martinez, usually it's 3 minutes, but I'm going to give you a little bit more because I know you're passionate about this, and so are we, and we want to make sure that we give you enough time to really talk about what you need to talk about, okay?
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marty Martinez. I'm a local business owner, and I'm here on behalf of the people of the county to organize or get the support of all the different districts for the opening of San Justo Reservoir. It's been closed for over a decade due to the zebra mussel infestation, and there is no plan in place for when the Department of Interior releases the environmental impact report. So what I request is that we unite and come to the water board and force them basically to act on this, because we can't go forward unless they approve it. They have to approve the eradication method and the control method. They have the potash management plan in place that they're planning on doing, which is just essentially potassium, and it's been found effective to treat and kill the mussels. But I think that it's kind of a waste of money. They want like $3.1 million for something that we don't know for a fact that it's going to destroy, because the tests that they've done are all in a laboratory, you know. But one way for sure to kill them is to have the lake drained completely and all the pipes drained completely and left dry for 30 days. Then the problem would be eradicated, and we can refill it, restock it, and the public can enjoy it. Because fishing teaches you things that you can't learn in school. It teaches you patience, stillness, and hope, and the anticipation of catching a fish. And these are things you can't learn in school. And with kids, with the city growing the way it is, it's not going to be long before kids are running up in gangs doing things they shouldn't be doing. So we really need to provide something for them to be able to express themselves in positive ways. And plus, it's a great place to barbecue, get together, camp, drink beer, and fish. So what I request is that all the districts come together, like I said, and unify to put pressure on the water board to accept and implement a plan, so that when the Department of Interior finally releases the report, that a plan is in place and we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I need to learn how to fish because I need patience. So maybe I'm going to have that, learn that hobby, I guess I would say. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Just to let you know, on June 25th, county staff, we confirm that San Benito Water District and a representative from Congressman Panetta's office will be here to discuss this in detail. So I invite you back on the 25th. I did make a commitment to everyone that at the town hall meeting I would bring this up and provide an update. Update was about a month early, but I just want to make sure that I followed through with my word and brought this to light. And I do think we need to come up with a plan. We need to work together. And everything you said is, I think, echoed by everybody up here. I'll let them talk after, but I think you have complete support.
Thank you.
Supervisor Botello? I'm sorry. Dela Cruz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that, thank you for coming here. Sometimes, unfortunately, it takes the members of the public to come to the board and ask us, and we're here to listen. And when the public comes in, we're very responsive, and I know that the chairman means it, and the rest of the board, they mean it, that we want to help, and we want to make sure that we open up San Justo Reservoir. It's been a passion of mine to make sure that is open up. I want to thank Supervisor Botello for going with me to Washington to make sure that San Justo Reservoir gets the attention of some of those people up there, because somehow they just don't act, not fast enough. And we had a presentation a couple years back in which we were not happy. But we want to invite everyone, the Water District, even the City Hall, sure, the federal, the state, everybody should come to the meeting on the June meeting. And a lot of members of the public, I plead to the public to come to that meeting that day and tell the federal and the state we mean business. It's very simple. We could have a vendor out there that can rent fishing equipment, and that equipment will stay there. It will not contaminate the rest of the bodies. I don't know what it is. They're either afraid of smart ideas or just not willing to listen to us. But hopefully, by packing this meeting and having a lot of members of the public, they will listen and we will start doing something. And again, I want to congratulate and thank Supervisor Botello for coming with me and fighting for San Justo Reservoir. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for putting this item on the agenda.
Supervisor Hernandez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What was your name again, sir? I'm sorry. Marty. Yeah, it's actually a personal thing for me, Marty. I used to live on the north side of on Sunny Slope side of town, and I had Sundays off and Wednesdays, and those were my days that I would have the opportunity, well, Sundays mostly, where I would take my son out there and we would spend, the afternoon and just basically till sunset. It was the most amazing experience, and my son to this day still reminds me, Dad, why did they close that reservoir? Why can't they open it back up? And I think that really echoes the sentiment of the community, because that place has been a big piece of this community. And it's been really frustrating for me, and this was obviously pre-getting elected to the supervisor seat, and now I'm definitely very focused on making sure that happens. So you definitely have my support. I want to see that place opened up. It's a gem of our community that's sad that's not being used. Thank you.
Supervisor Botello?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martinez. This board, even previous supervisors, have been committed to working to try to get San Justo Reservoir reopened. This is a highly complex issue, though. It's not a local issue. This is not local. This is a regional, state concern. We have countless of times pressed our Congress representative before Congressman Panetta, Congressman Farr on this issue. We've worked at the state level, and San Diego County has always been committed to trying to get those zebra mussels eradicated. I personally have had meetings with different agencies, the Bureau of Reclamation, the State Fish and Wildlife Department, the Water District, other water officials up there at the reservoir itself, and it's been frustrating, to see how slow government could work. Sometimes I think our county works slow. Try to get the federal government move on anything, it's just like watching a glacier melt. But anyhow, it's we're trying to keep working on this and push. This is as close as we've ever been. I think the money is going to be a big problem because the lake has to be treated. And then you have a water district that controls the water in there, and their primary focus is not your shop. I hate to say that. It's agriculture. It's the water that flows through the San Felipe project that they have to pay and service a bond, and you have thousands of acres being irrigated with millions of dollars of crops. And that's, if they could keep that full, that reservoir full, that's what they're to do. they're sold out water and service their bonds, and so that's the finances there. Then you have the pressure on the water district that other water districts don't want to even take a risk of the public having access to that reservoir ever again because of the zebra mussels, and they're saying you keep that shut, and the water district not wanting to take up that liability, because I know I've talked to the companies that have the formulation to treat the reservoir. You draw it down to a little bit bigger than a puddle, hopefully, and then you treat the reservoir and you kill the zebra mussels. Will that eradicate them? And no company will guarantee that it eradicates them. It just controls them, and that's a problem. Now, on the flip side, can we reopen it to fishing with a proper program? I believe so. Other areas and lakes in the west have the other type of mussels, and you go through a very restrictive inspection process when you before you could leave the property, and that's what would have to happen here with a vendor, that no boats coming in, but you have to go through some sort of inspection to leave. Right. And that's possible to do, and I think that's what we should strive to do here. So let's keep, like you suggested, get everybody we can come on the 25th, and the pressure is not on us. We have to put pressure on the water district, Fish and Wildlife, because they have a big say in it, and also the state water resources officials. And it's not going to be easy. It just flat won't be easy if we could find the money to reclaim that water. So I'm not overly optimistic, but no job is too easy, that's for sure.
Right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Maybe it's my newness or my type A personality. I'm very excited about this, very optimistic. So I used to go fishing there with a friend of mine's father, and he had a electric motor on his boat, and we'd troll, and I learned a lot out there about fishing. And one of the things that you mentioned is patience. And so getting into this, actually, believe it or not, before the election, I reached out to our representative, Jimmy Panetta, and I asked him where we're at with this, what's going on, because I got a lot of questions, during the campaign process about San Justo, and I wanted to be able to provide an accurate response. And I can tell you that he is focused on this, even with all the national issues. He is very dedicated and focused to our local issues and this one as well. And right now, kind of for an update on the technical side of this, I'm not sure if we're going to have staff do it, but I'll just go over it real quick. As we have the Denver Technical Services Center is in the final phases of completing the draft eradication plan, and that was sent out for peer review, which, I guess other scientists will be looking at this, and their responses were expected by the end of May, so we should have some more information at the June 25th meeting. This project has been tagged for inclusion in a nationwide effort for collaborative conservation and adaptation strategy toolbox, which is a joint venture between the Climate Hub and the Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau and Reclamation, and the Forest Service. A lot of federal agencies in there. And in 2016, there was a staff report that was brought back, and it talks about, what is needed with the County Water District, Bureau of Reclamation. And then once we have this adopted plan in place, we have to go to Fish and Game for them to basically certify the amount of zebra mussels that are still in there and say that we're willing to take the risk to allow this to happen. So it's kind of the technical side of it, number one. Number two, I support you 100% in your efforts, and we need to work on focusing to get this jewel back open for our community. That's one side of it. The other side of it that I would really like to explore with staff in the Water District, frankly, I think it's going to be more the Water District, is what Supervisor Botello and Supervisor De La Cruz mentioned was, if you go fishing out there and you have a vendor, perhaps we put out an RFP, somebody wants to manage the reservoir, they have all their fishing gear locked up in a box. You come out, you use their fishing gear, you it gets sanitized, they spray it down, they put it back in the box, it doesn't go anywhere. What are the chances of doing that? And I'd like to understand from staff why we couldn't do that. What are the rules? What are the laws? Is it just is it an opinion? Is it something we have to get a majority of the water board to support, or what's the hurdle to actually doing that piece of it? I'd like to understand that. And then I also think as a board of supervisors, if and when everything goes our way and we're able to open this up, we need to start thinking about how we're going to manage that when it opens so that there's not a year delay. And I know we can't go out to RFP now. We can't do all these different things because there's a timing issue. If we select a vendor and this thing doesn't get open for 5 years, then we're going to have to do it all over again. But we should just start thinking about maybe preparing that RFP. Or are we going to have a county parks department do it and hire staff to do it? Or are we just going to have put out the RFP and have a company run it like was done in the past? But these are all things that we should probably be thinking about maybe now, so that if and when we get the good news, we can put our plan in place and move forward. And those are my thoughts, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the time.
Any other questions from board members?
Well, Mr. Chair, actually, I talked to Marty about a week ago, and I told Marty of the idea of the vendor concept, because I think that's a wonderful idea. If we can get a local vendor to manage it, we're helping the community, we're helping a local business. Just the way Mr. Supervisor Hernandez keeps saying, reinvest back in our local businesses. I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'm happy that we now have support from the board, to push on that concept, because I've been pushing for that for about 3 or 4 years. And again, it's all about the federal and state government trying to work with us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you. This takes us to our next item, the Emergency Medical Services. Approved contract amendment number 5 from American Medical Response West.
Oh, that's right, they were there.
Good morning, members of the Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's a little embarrassing to have to come up to you 2 times in 2 meetings, but it's very important to us that we get this item right, and that when we ask for your signature, that all parties involved are happy with the product, and that we know moving forward that this will be a successful contract.
Just one thing.
Yes.
Being embarrassed? No. I'd rather do this 10 times and have it done right than have this signed, and then after it's signed, we see a lot of flaws in it. So don't ever feel embarrassed about this. It was our decision to take it back, send it back. So
I appreciate that. But hopefully this is the last time. So, with that being said, and coming back before this board again, we wanted to make sure, for one, that there was a very good understanding of what we're talking about in this contract. So we've prepared yet another presentation to really dive in more clinically of what we're talking about when we talk about the possibility of a basic life support ambulance being on the road in addition to our advanced life support ambulances. Chris Mangano, our EMS coordinator, is going to go into the specific changes to the contract that was approved 2 weeks ago versus the contract that's before you today, which is literally just the removal of one sentence. But before that, I wanted to pass this over to our medical director, Dr. Dave Ghilarducci, who's going to go through some of the, like I said, the clinical pieces of this. One thing I did want to bring up is, I live in the county. I'm a resident of this county. I can guarantee you I would never put before this board a contract that I would not feel comfortable with as a resident, that my kids, that my wife, that myself might have to use in an emergency. And I can tell you from certainty that I am very comfortable with this, and I'm very proud of this contract, and I think it'll do a lot of good for this county. So with that being said, Dave?
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the board. Thank you for
giving me the opportunity to speak today. This is the first time I think I've ever come before you, so if you don't mind, I'd like to just briefly introduce myself. I'm Dave Gilladuce. I'm an emergency physician in San Jose, but I'm also been the medical director here in San Benito County for about 4 years. I do the same role in Santa Cruz County, and before that, Santa Clara County for about 7 years. Before medicine, I was a firefighter battalion chief in Santa Clara County for 16 years, so I think that adds up to about 38 years of treating emergency patients in one perspective or another. Anyway, let's see, I just hit this. There we go. I just wanted to go over with you today a few items, kind of a short summary here you have in front of you. Happy to take any questions at any point. Please interrupt me if you have any. But basically, just a short summary of the current affairs of EMS in San Benito County and a kind of national perspective of what's happening with EMS in general. Some follow-up information also for you. You had some important questions, I think really showed your diligence and interest in this matter. It's certainly very important to the citizens of San Benito County. So I wanted to provide some follow-up information with respect to that. And then finally give you a recommendation on what I think I would recommend that you do for this particular contract extension. All right. So one of the problems or challenges or opportunities that we have in San Benito County is that it's a beautiful place to live, but it's a low-density population. And we know on a national model that providing EMS services to a dispersed population is actually more expensive than it would be in a dense urban area. The patients tend to be spread out. Response times are longer. We don't have the specialty care that we often need in this county. No small hospital can provide trauma services, STEMI or heart attack services. We really have to rely on taking our ambulances out of the county to take patients to these places as quickly as possible. And as a result, we, on a routine basis, actually rely on mutual aid from our neighboring counties, basically their goodwill to provide services to us. And mutual aid really only works when it's reciprocal, when we can return the favor to them. And so we feel that we need to get into a situation where we're more self-reliant, that we're less dependent on outside services, and we want to have a little bit more depth than we currently do in order to do that. So one of the unfortunate things is that it's very expensive to put an ambulance in service. It's about $700,000 a year, and that includes all the costs that are associated, from the tires to the insurance to the lights at the station, fuel, and of course labor costs are the most expensive part of that. On the flip side, there's really inadequate reimbursement for EMS. I mean, we usually think of public safety as this kind of triad of police and fire and EMS, right? But the one thing that police and fire have that EMS doesn't have is public taxpayer support. And so EMS has always traditionally been reliant on whatever revenues they can generate from patient care. And so, unfortunately, overall, in AMR's case, and this is really true industry-wide, is that collection rates are very low, 23 cents on the dollar, essentially. So for every dollar bill, they collect less than a quarter. And then the other thing, all the virtues of the Affordable Care Act, in terms of enrolling more people and there are fewer people without insurance, one flip side of that is that it's really increased our Medi-Cal rolls. And so about a quarter of all of our patients are Medi-Cal insured. The problem with that, of course, is that Medi-Cal has a very low reimbursement for services. So they will pay only about $120 per transport, and that represents about a quarter of their cost recovery. So essentially every Medi-Cal transport is a 75% loss for our vendor. And then, of course, the uninsured often generate no revenue. The final thing, and I think EMS has been able to survive over the years because they could cost shift. And so those with commercial insurance those insurers would actually pay the difference and be able to sort of keep the operation afloat. And we're finding now that these commercial insurers no longer want a cost share. And so they're actually deciding what they'll pay rather than what the bill says itself. So lots of issues there. So it really boils down to about $1 million a year in uncompensated care. This is really a public service, And so it can make the finances difficult. So I just wanted to give you that background. The other thing is, and this is not just unique to San Benito County, but with the national low unemployment rate, you'll hear in the news today even the fact that companies are struggling finding enough people to fill their jobs. And this is true for the medical industry as well. We have a very robust competition with fire departments as well. The fire departments tend to prefer to hire paramedics that are already trained, and so rather than hire somebody who's new and then send them to paramedic school on a fire department salary, which would be very expensive, they tend to find people that already have their paramedic certification. So they often will find those people in our ambulance services. And then overall, there's just low industry wages. It is difficult to make a living wage as a paramedic. It's a very tough job. And so there are very few people that have the ones that we have are amazing that they're able to do this. But as you can see, the recruiting issues can be a difficult thing. So there simply aren't enough paramedics around. So I want to introduce to you today the concept of dual versus single tiered EMS systems. And the single tier is the traditional system of sending an ambulance, an ALS, or a paramedic ambulance to every call. Now, many cities and many places have evolved to go to a dual tier. Well, they decide what level of ambulance to send based on the type of dispatch that we get. And so one of the things I just wanted to share with you, some statistics here in our single tier system, is that about 66% of the calls that we go on do not require a paramedic, which is kind of a startling statistic, right? Most of the time, those paramedic skills are unused on that call.
Excuse me, sir. What percentage was that? I'm sorry.
66, 2/3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 3/4 of our patients actually require no medications. So what this does is when we send a paramedic ambulance to every call, we in a way sort of create this artificial scarcity, that we encumber a highly skilled medical provider on a call that is a low acuity call, and they're now not available for that heart attack that happens down the street. They can't just simply drop off a patient and then drive to another call and come back for them later. It just doesn't work that way. So we have this problem where we have the skilled people being used in places where they're not doing the most good. The other thing it does is it creates a lot of crew fatigue. They're running on a lot of calls that will drain them down. We know that performance can be a problem when you get fatigued. It's a safety issue. So in short, the single-tier system is overall pretty expensive and inefficient. And so that's why we're proposing a dual-tier system that allows our dispatchers who are emergency medical dispatcher trained, they can actually prioritize the calls. There's an alpha through echo range, and the alphas and betas are the lower acuity calls. These are folks with maybe ankle sprains, people that might have fallen out of bed without any big injury. There may be some people from a nursing home that have some abnormal lab tests and need to get to the hospital for a recheck, but it's not an urgent thing. Those can be appropriately handled by a BLS or a EMT rig. The big thing that it does is it preserves these ALS resources that for critical cases, and it increases our capacity for transport. So this means that we don't have to call for mutual aid as often as we do now. And finally, I think, and this is important, having been an EMT in my former career, it does provide a career path for them. So they finally have an opportunity to be more than just the driver in the ambulance. They now have an opportunity to use their training. So the question that you had a couple of weeks ago, I thought was very good, was, I think your main concern, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, are we now providing a inferior level of care for patients by only having EMTs versus paramedics? And I just wanted to review kind of a quick chart of what paramedics can do and what EMTs can do. And some of the most important immediate life-saving skills are actually done at the EMT level. And so we know that people that don't have early CPR do not survive cardiac arrest. Early defibrillation is critical. Simple airway control, providing oxygen, obviously emergency childbirth, bleeding control for trauma patients, fracture care, and so forth. All these things can be done by EMTs and paramedics. And in the last couple of years, we've added a couple things you'll see in yellow. That's epinephrine. The EMTs will now carry epinephrine, can treat those emergency cases. They can give Narcan for opioid overdoses, and they can even monitor blood glucose. One of the big things that used to be only in the realm of paramedics was intubation or advanced airways. And we're now proposing to add in green what are called supraglottic airways, which have been found to be clinically equivalent in the field to endotracheal intubation. Endotracheal intubation is what often your anesthesiologist will do for general surgery. And so that is a skill that is traditionally reserved for paramedics, but we're going to be adding this adjunct skill for EMTs. So what that leaves is just 4 or 5 different things that paramedics can do that EMTs cannot do. Those are certainly important, but they're only important for a very small minority of cases. So what we have right now is this single tier, which is 2 ambulances that are on duty 24/7, 365. And we have this quick response vehicle, which is a single paramedic. It has no transport capability. It's available about 16 hours a week right now. And the idea was to get a paramedic there quickly and then sort of wait for more help to come. And they can't pick up the patient and take them to the hospital. They have to wait for an ambulance that can then transport the patient. We find this less than ideal. So our proposal is to replace that quick response vehicle with an actual ambulance staffed with 2 EMTs. And the contract in front of you today is proposing that it's the minimum staffing of 2 EMTs, but AMR is willing and is interested in finding, if they can find a paramedic to staff that. But right now, with the current situation, it's certainly difficult, and they can't. They're telling us they can't guarantee that they would be able to staff it with a paramedic every time. My thought to you is that this is not necessarily a bad thing. I think that we can effectively use this and still have those existing paramedics available for the highest acuity calls. And then the other question I think that you had was, in one proposal was, well, maybe if AMR can't find a paramedic, maybe we need to go out to bid and find somebody else that can do this. And that certainly is an option, and I think it's one to consider. I just wanted to quickly go over what an EOA process is, because I just went through this in Santa Cruz County. It took us about 2 years. The consultant, we had to have a consultant. We had stakeholder meetings. You have to develop the RFP, finding people that are non-conflicted to sit on the board for the RFP. That RFP then has to go to the state for review and approval. In Santa Cruz's case, it went back and forth about 5 times. Then you have the bidders conference. Many of you are familiar with this whole RFP process. There's the bid selection and review. There's the development of the contract, which again has to be approved by the state EMS agency. And then finally, there's like a 6-month lead time for any new provider to come in and gear up for the process. They have to hire people, buy ambulances, et cetera, et cetera. So it's about 2 years to go through one of these processes. It's probably anywhere between $150,000 and $250,000, and it's going to take a lot of staff time, including county council as well as the EMS staff to do that. So, and one of the big things I think you may not be aware of is that we currently enjoy a kind of grandfather clause with the state EMS agency. Many other counties are actually in a difficult position with the state. In fact, there are some lawsuits pending right now with the state in terms of their level of oversight. We, fortunately, do not have that situation because we have an incumbent system. Once we open it up to contract, now we're going to be under that same kind of difficult level of oversight that I think we would like to avoid if we could. So,
Excuse me, sir.
Yes. Question?
Yeah, I had a question, sir, Mr. Chair. So what is an incumbent system? I mean, you're saying it's basically if I'm not mistaken, you said it's better right? There's not that same level of oversight. What's the difference?
Yeah, the difference is once you become a county that puts out RFPs for this, then you have to renew those every 10 years and go through this process that I just described. Right now, we're not required to do that because we have a system in place that has been in place before these rules were
Oh, that's why you mentioned grandfathered. Got it.
Yeah, that's the grandfather part. Right. Good question. Okay, just 2 more slides. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. So the other thing is what we found, too, in this, all these challenges that I talked about as far as the cost of care, the reimbursement, and so forth. We've had a couple of counties that have done EOA contracts and put out to bid. And actually 3 local counties, Santa Cruz County, Santa Clara County, Monterey County, so kind of a diverse mix here. All 3 of those only had one single bidder, and that was the incumbent in those counties that bid. So it's very difficult. There aren't really that many ambulance companies out there. There were a couple of tries to go with unproven companies. One was in 2008, you might remember WestMed that failed in Monterey County. That cost the county millions of dollars to resolve. And there was a real risk that patients were not going to get emergency care. And then Rural Metro, which was an even bigger sort of failure because this was a national company, went bankrupt in Santa Clara County, again with many millions of dollars of loss to the county to have to support that operation. So, obviously there's some downsides to go to an EOA kind of bid process. My recommendation to you is to approve the contract allowing the addition of a BLS-only ambulance, but when possible to add a paramedic to that. It provides immediate life-saving care, which is what we all want. It gives us additional transport capability, which we currently do not have. It preserves our ALS units, the paramedic units, for those calls where they're really needed. It reduces our reliance on distant mutual aid. It's really a more sustainable, proven model of care delivery. The pioneer in this was actually King County, Washington. Seattle has been doing this for years, and they've really proven that this model works. We believe it'll work here as well. And finally, by approving this contract, we avoid the financial and legal costs associated with the EOA bid process with really unlikely chance that we're going to have a different result anyway. So thank you. And then I do have some references we can send to you if you'd like to look up any of the material behind this.
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say that I've been in contact with EMS. I'm also a member of the EMCC committee, and there was a unanimous vote at the EMCC committee to send this to us for ratification and approval. The one slight change has to do with the, I'm sure our Chris is going to go over it now and talk about the exact wording, and it had to do with the way that AMR is going to go out and ask for this, and it had to do with some staffing and labor and other issues. So I'm supportive of where we're at today. I just want to see what the final wording is there, if you don't mind.
So thank you and good morning. To reiterate, this is a 1-year contract, and during this 1 year, we will be working on a 5-year extension. And the contract verbiage that was changed is in 2.2C. And the part in red is what was added to this current contract before you today, that the contractor will attempt to staff the 3rd unit with a paramedic and an EMT, which will make it an ALS unit. A report regarding verification of efforts will be provided to county's Board of Supervisors twice a year, and contractor shall advise county when paramedic staffing is not available. So that's pretty much a summary of what we had what was recommended 2 weeks ago, and this is verbiage that AMR has agreed to.
I'm looking at AMR to make sure I have a head nod so we're not back again in 2 weeks.
No, they signed it. You have a signed contract before you.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, bring it back to the board. Any questions from the board? Further questions?
No questions, but I appreciate the information this morning. That was a very good summary of the challenges ambulance services, and like I said at the last meeting, I've been very happy with AMR. I think they've done a real good job for our county, especially in light of some of the neighboring counties having issues and troubles, and hopefully we move this forward on a 1-year contract and then get a 5-year contract in place. Been great partners.
And I do note that Exhibit 1 to the amendment that's not included in the packet, but it's on file with the clerk of the board, and I believe it was attached to the last meeting. And it's just the prior contracts.
Yes.
What's the wish of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the item as amended today.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. 5-0.
Thank you for all your work on this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This takes us to closed session.
There's a couple changes to the closed session items. First of all, it's closed session public employee performance evaluation, County Council pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957. So with the changes, with the board's permission on item 39, we're going to take off the first item of that closed session, which pertains to Buena Vista Road, and I'll bring it back at a future date. The second item is public property street address 2733 John Smith Road, Hollister, California 95023. Agency negotiators Ray Espinoza, Barbara Thompson, the County of San Benito, and Waste Connections. Under negotiation is price and terms of payment. Number 40, I'll take off, as well as the first two cases, which would be County of Santa Cruz and the Disability Rights, California, leaving on the case which indicates Rose versus County of San Benito Superior Court, case number CU 17-00151. On 41, I'm taking off the anticipated litigation, leaving on 42, which is significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivisions D2 and E2 of Government Code Section 54956.9, member cases 1, facts and circumstances justifying closed session, potential litigation relating to a letter dated March 5th, 2019, related to park fees at Sunnyside Estates. That's KB Homes.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we're heading to closed session.
A lot of notes. Yeah. That's the way I remember.
I know. 2 in a row, Anthony.
It's funny because sometimes I feel like, man, I'm writing the same stuff that I have on paper. But no, it's, a lot of the times it's like I'm actually taking it in.
Yeah.
So
we need to get, hopefully they'll leave some so we can have a copy of each one of these.
Yeah, I'm going to email this.